Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to cross-tabulate multiple response survey data with other single response variables such as gender, location, education, and some other variables that you may want to cross-tabulate depending on the kind of data that you have. A bit of context is that in our previous videos, I've covered all different kinds of multiple response survey data that you may encounter depending on the platform that you use to collect your data. Check in the description below for all different kinds of multiple response survey data that you have. So it's good to know that cross-tabulation with multiple response survey data in this video would work for any kind of multiple response that you have. You just need to make reference to the previous videos and then you get ahead. But in this video, we are going to look at multiple response data where the responses are separated by a comma delimiter. So this is a survey data where we have information of respondents such as their gender, location, their highest education, their occupation, and the multiple response variables that we are looking at are devices that they own. We asked respondents which of the following devices do you own. So the responses included smartphone, desktop, tablet, and so on. Then the next question that we also had, which was a multiple response, is which of the following social media platforms do you use? So we have WhatsApp, Facebook, and so on. Then the third one is the media channels that they use to get information, either through a television, radio, social media, word of mouth, etc. So these are the three multiple response questions that you have. Depending on the kind of data you are dealing with, you may have more than response questions in your survey data. All right. So how do we cross-tabulate these multiple response questions with the single variables that we have, such as how do we handle this? So first, what you need to do is to load your data to Power Query. So once you have your data in a table form, you go to data. From data, you go to from table or range and load it to Power Query. So since we have more than one multiple response question, let's name this table as our data. It's good to do that. So what we are going to do is that we are going to unpivot each of the multiple response questions or columns and have a table for that. So what we need to do is to right click this data and duplicate it. So the first multiple response question that we have is question 5. You can check it there. So we can name this one as question 5, devices they own. You can just use a short description, but that will help you to identify that specific data in your tables that you have in Power Query. Okay, so what we are going to do is that we are going to unpivot all these multiple response columns, this multiple response column. So what you need to do is that first you have to identify all the variables that you want to cross-tabulate with this multiple response question. So in our case, we want to cross-tabulate with gender, location, highest education, and so on. So first, we take our question 5. This is the multiple response question that we want to cross-tabulate with the other single response variables. So what we need to do, we will select this column. You can check out a video on how to analyze a single column comma separated multiple response survey data in the previous videos. So we select this and then go to transform. So from transform, we go to split column by delimiter, and here the delimiter is a comma. So it has been selected, we OK. So what we have is that all the responses have been separated into separate columns. So we need to select all these columns, all the question 5 columns. All right. So once we have this selected, the next thing we need to do is to unpivot only selected. All right. So we have it here. So once we unpivot, 2 columns will be added. We don't need this attribute column. Those are the column, the questions. Then this is our unpivoted multiple response. So we have question 5, devices they own. All right. So we are done with the first multiple response column. So what we do is that we don't need this last column. We don't need this multiple response question to. We don't also need this in this table. So what we do is that we select that and then we remove all those columns that we don't need. It's necessary to do this because once you have several columns that are kind of being pivoted and you have the number of rows will increase, and since you are going to have several tables, your model could become bigger and it will slow down the speed. So we are done. Then the next thing is that we duplicate again. Now is question 6. So question 6, you can check it out, is the social media channels they use. You can copy this, keep it, and then that same too is question 6. So we select this column, we go to split column by delimiter, then we are done, and then we select all these columns that we have for the question 6, and then we unpivot only selected columns. Great. So this one we don't need this attribute column too, and then this is our question 6. We name it. So similar to the previous one, we don't need these columns. So what we do is that we remove them. All right, then we are done. Then we duplicate again now for question 7. So question 7 is media channels they use to get media channels they use. All right, so that is our question 7. So we select this one too again, we split column by delimiter, and then we OK. So now what we do next is to select all these multiple columns of that question. And then what we do next is we unpivot only selected. And then again, 2 columns have been added. We don't need the attribute column, we remove it. And then this is our question 7. Similarly, we don't need these other columns that are added there. So we select and then we remove those columns. All right. So what we have done is that we have unpivoted the multiple response columns into each table. So it's good to do this because if you don't do that and you want to unpivot on a table like we did for question 5, and we want to unpivot question 6 in that same question 5 table, the data rows will keep on increasing and the model becomes bigger to a point that it may not be able to run. So it's good to kind of pivot separate table for each question. So even if you have maximum 20 multiple response question, you end up having 20 separate pivoted tables. So to reduce the model size, what you do is that for each table you remove all columns that you don't need, but make sure that you keep all single columns that you may need in your data, especially the data about the respondents, because at some point you may need to segment the data. So it's good to keep that in all your multiple response pivoted table. So once we do this, we go to home. From home, we close and load Power Query. So what we need to do is that we add this to a data model. We want to generate a pivot table in an existing sheet. So we want to have our pivoted tables here. All right. Then we OK. So a pivot table has been generated. So when we look on the right, we'll see that we have all tables that we have in our in our data model. So this is the main table, and then we have the unpivoted multiple response tables here. So the first thing that we want to do, we want to cross-tabulate our first multiple response column, which is devices they own. So we pick this depending on how you want to segment your data and the kind of insight that you want to generate from your data. It will determine whether you put the multiple response on the row or on the column. So for us, we want to make reference to gender. We want to find out that how many males own a smartphone, how many females own a smartphone or a tablet and so on. So we pick this gender and put it in the row for, and then we pick our next thing that we do is to pick our multiple response devices they own. We put it in the row first. All right. So the next thing we need to do is to pick our ID and drop it in the values for. So here we want to count by distinct count. So we selected. Great. So you see that the grand total here is 50, and the 50 is the number of respondents who answered that question. So if we do just count, if we summarize by just count, we get 74. And this 74 is the total number of responses. Because respondents could select more than one, we end up having more than the number of respondents. So if we divide by this, it doesn't give us an insight with reference to the sample size or the number of people who answered that multiple response question. So we need to summarize by distinct count, and then we have it here. So what you can do is that, so depending on how, as I said, you kind of want to make reference to your data, depending on the insight you want to get. If our goal is to find out that if we take males, how many males owns a smartphone, so we need to divide by the row total here. We want to divide out of females how many have, and so on. If we also want to make reference to this, then we divide it by we show values as percentage of row totals. So this is what we have, and then we are done. So for pivot table, if you want to kind of make it a bit static without it kind of moving up and down, you can uncheck auto fit column with width. So with that, if a variable is bigger, it wouldn't be moving the rows up and down, expanding it. So we have it. You can do all kind of editings that you want to do with this table, and then that's it. So the same way, if the same thing, we want to have our data, break our data down by location. So you just copy the first table down, and then now you look for, we take out gender, and then we put location. That's it. That is it. Then if we also want to have, so this is location. So we have location. Then this is gender. This is gender. All right. So the same thing, if we want to look at the breakdown by occupation, it's the same thing. So this table, copy it down, and then we look for, we take out location, and then we bring occupation here. and that is it. The same thing with education. If we want to find out the breakdown by education, copy that same table down, but now we take out occupation from the row, and then we drop education, and that's it. So with this, we have uh, cross-tabulated our multiple response question, which was on the devices that they own by the segment of the respondents, such as their gender, their location, occupation, education, and so on. So if you have any other single response variable in there, you want to kind of break it down, you just follow the same steps. All right. So now this was on this table was on devices they own. So the same thing, we can do the same thing for the next multiple response question. So it's the same thing that you follow. So now we copy this down, and then we can format it. So you just change the color, just to make it easy to differentiate. So, but now what we want to do is that we want to look at the social media channels that they use. So here, we take out our highest education, then we pick gender, drop it here from that table. So you see that because the tables have a common unique ID, which is the ID, by default, pivot table will kind of depict the relationship. So you can kind of establish this relationship. Once you establish the relationship, you can connect all these tables. I'll cover this in a separate video. So we don't want the connection for now. So we drop this, and then we pick this out from that table. And then we are looking at social media channel. So we'll put that in the row first, take out this one, and then we'll bring in the ID from the social media multiple response column. So this one too, we want to count by distinct count. And that is it. So because this one was in, we have to format this in numbers, and then we can equally show values as percentage of row totals, and the same thing. So for social media channels, you do the same thing. You can cross-tabulate with all other single response variables that you have in the data, and the same thing with the other multiple response question. So now let's look at the media channels that they own. So we can pick this one, move it down. Let's change the color again to yellow. Then this one is media channels. So the same thing. So we have to look for the media channels multiple response table. So it's here. So we take out this gender and pick the gender from the media channels table. Then we look for the other variables that we want. So this is our multiple response media channel. We pick it and drop it here. And then in the same table, we pick our ID and drop it here. And the same thing here too, we want to count by distinct count. All right. So if we look at it, see that we have to format this as numbers because we brought it as percentage. So we have to format it. And the same thing too, we can summarize this by row totals, so that we know that out of this number of females, out of the number of females that we have, this is the percentage that owns that use TV and so on. So you can arrange it in descending order and so on. So this is how we cross-tabulate multiple response survey data using pivot table. Thank you.